Holy mother of fake god. I'm not entirely sure what has the potential to do more damage to a building. 2 morbidly obese people in a top-floor flat having very aggressive sex where I assume she was jumping on top of him to try and find the pickled gherkin. Or a wrecking ball into an office building. I'll let you all envision this, as quite frankly this astonishes me, but also has me wonder if it had anything to do with the fact that he might not be able to find his penis, or whether she just really wanted to break his hips. That all aside, today we're going to be talking about how it has been recommended that women work less hours because of certain stresses placed upon them that they seem to be unable to handle. Right. Are women working too hard? Study calls for females to have a shorter working week than men because many are on the brink of dangerous burnout. Sounds to me like they need more equality. And I don't just mean equality, I mean more equality. You know, the kind where they get additional perks, benefits that men don't get, but the men still have to do the same job and more hours to make up for the fact that their female counterpart is not doing the same job, but still getting more equality. For centuries, women have been experts at juggling their relationships, careers, children, health, and home all at once. I think there's a lot of nonsense in this already. For centuries, women's relationships have been determined by families. Just saying. Have you ever heard of a dowry? Or arranged marriage? Careers. Well, being a mother is a career for a lot of people, and I'm not looking down at those that choose to do that. But with the arguments we're about to be presented with, I want to now point out that you are going to be making a false equivalence. Children, yes. Health, well. How to phrase this without sounding like a prick? It depends on your definition or parameters for health. If it means health as in looking after oneself, hygiene and all such things like that, maybe. But don't forget a number of medical innovations that made it so women could actually survive, for example, childbirth. Yeah, no. And home all at once, while it was their career. The weight of maintaining this balancing act has increased exponentially over the past 2 decades. Thank you, equality. To the point that more women than ever are reporting feelings of exhaustion, anxiety, and depression. There is a societal stigma when it comes to people talking about these kind of things, especially if you're men. Now, as more people are coming forward and it is being spoken of in a less derogatory fashion, I think you'll find that while your study and the study you're going to cite focuses on women, you're ignoring men because you want to make a grand point, or because you have to learn that men had to do this before you. They had to adjust to all of that, all those additional pressures. Quite a number of people will still go through this today, but you don't care. In fact, many are on the brink of a serious burnout. A study published by the Australian National University found that the healthy working week for women should be limited to 34 hours compared to 47 hours for men. We are going to address the study soon, I promise. But this annoys me and raises an obvious and immediate question. How will this affect the gender pay gap? Because surely, this is one of the major talking points of it, where women, for doing the same job, are not earning as much, but people seem to forget here that a number of women don't do as many hours as men. Your study has recommended that women actually work less. This will lead to many to either want women to be paid more, to be on par with men who work more hours, because they can handle the stress better, apparently, or you have to accept that women earn less than men because they don't do as much as men, according to your study. These findings reflected the outside of work hours that women lose to traditional domestic responsibilities and caregiving duties. That's very sexist. However, a randomized survey of 8,000 Aussies found that more than 66% of full-time working adults spend more than 40 hours on the job every week. This means that a huge proportion of women are operating at a consistent disadvantage to their male counterparts. Right, so now we should actually go to the study, because I think this is quite an interesting thing to talk about. Highlights. Work hours are not uniformly bad for mental health, but have a distinct tipping point. So acknowledging there is a tipping point, fantastic. Because women's time is constrained, they have lower work hour health thresholds. This just tells me if they have a family, that the male needs to do more to help be as much of a caregiver as the woman, or you have ignored it to make a generalized point, or ignored the fact that a man in fact is contributing to make a generalized point. Current work hour regulations and expectations are disadvantaging women's health. It is known that women retire younger than men. We have this in our country where women do, because their health deteriorates faster, by and large, than men's. Depending on the occupation, of course. Because let's face it, that does play quite a key role. If it's a very physically demanding job, yes, you're going to want to retire younger. For women and men to equally share care, work hour limits need to be lowered. This is actually something that reminded me an awful lot of the EU's work regulations, where for full-time work, the maximum you could work was 40 hours a week. Of course, that does change depending on occupation, and I think there are certain contractual obligations that can be used to negate it. 0-hour contracts and negotiated contracts, of course. Oh, and I actually support this being enshrined in British law. I think it's a good idea to have work hour regulations. I think it's very reasonable. But to then take that and to decide that women are mandated to only work a certain number of hours would annoy a lot of people, especially if they are low income. They're not going to agree with you, because while your findings may think or assert, based on Aussies, that women's mental health is not benefiting from working the same number of hours as a man, which sounds like equality, and the consequence of it, almost like there's a biological difference, tells me that you're not interested in equality. So is this the point now where we've gotten to, where people have equality, but because people are now starting to suffer because of it, you want to take it away, or recommend it be taken away, or the other recommendation being, if they have families, they have children, that the male take on as much responsibility as the mother in caregiving duties and obviously domestic household work. Long work hours erode health, which the setting of maximum weekly hours aims to avert. The 48-hour limit and the evidence base to support it has evolved from a workforce that was largely male, whose time in the labour force was enabled by women's domestic work and caregiving. The gender composition of the workforce has now changed, and many women, as well as some men, combine caregiving with paid work, a change viewed as fundamental for gender equality. However, it raises questions on the suitability of the work time limit and the extent it is protective of health. Because this is based in Australia, and the work limit is 48 hours as opposed to the EU's 40 hours, I can certainly see a point here, because I'm sure when they base some of their arguments, if they tried to within the United Kingdom, I don't think it would hold up as well as it would, well, in their own country. Now I have to immediately point out, the cost of living in this country varies from region to region. It really does. So how many hours people need to work is somewhat dependent on how much they need to live on, and of course the cost of living is derived from that. 48-hour limits almost implies that you need to work longer hours to survive. I don't know enough about the Australian economy to be able to talk about that. But perhaps instead of lowering it for women so far, which in this you've recommended 38 for women, 43.5 for men, instead, why not lower it to 40 for each, and try and find a way to balance the economy in such a way that families are not being harmed financially because of it, which is an inevitable fallout, one that never goes down very well. I will link this in the description for those of you that are interested in reading this. It is a fascinating read, and I kind of wish I could cover more of it, but time constraints on my part mean I'm unable to do so and instead have to go back to the article, because some of the points they make when using quotes from the article are far more fascinating. The real-life impact of these findings are concerning in terms of female mental health, warns ANU lead researcher Dr. Foreign. Long working hours erode mental and physical health because it leaves less time to eat well and look after oneself properly. Because of the additional demands placed on women, Dr. Foreign says that it is impossible for women to work the long hours often expected by employers unless they compromise their health. So what is the solution? More equality is the solution. I hope feminism supports this, by the way. Nothing says hypocrisy better after all. Experts recommend that women should work shorter hours in order to compensate for the unpaid jobs they do every single day. That sounds generalized, and also a consequence of a choice. This might sound harsh, and I'm not going to apologize for it, but if you choose to have a family, then the consequence of that is that you, both of you in fact, whether it be man and wife and wife, man and man, Z and Z and whatever, you have chosen to bring life into this world. The consequence of that is that you need to not only maintain the house for them and yourselves, be able to look after yourselves, but also be able to give correct and adequate time to your children so that they can grow and be better than you. Unfortunately for a number of people, you don't just get to get on with it. You don't get to take less time. Unfortunately for a number of people, this means additional pressure placed upon you. If you already are somewhat mentally weak, you are going to get stressed very easily. Some people have to work several jobs as a single parent to raise many children, and they don't complain, they get on with it. Sometimes if the children are old enough, they delegate the jobs, chores even. It is simply a price, one that everyone pays if they choose to have a family. Trying to legitimize this in a study will undoubtedly raise a number of questions as to whether or not women are as capable as men, and this paper will indicate no. I have to draw upon the very old argument that men have been doing these jobs for a lot longer, and while they haven't been able to talk about their mental health as well as that of women, they have had to simply get over it. I'm not suggesting that women do that, because now we live in a far better society, where if people are coping poorly, they can seek out help. And the no-nonsense approach of, if it is expected of you to be the caregiver and work full-time, might I suggest you delegate certain tasks to your other half. If they are unable to, have you considered leaving them? Because clearly they are unable to be a good parent, which would surely be a priority. Now, to end this video on a slightly better note, I am not going to be here tomorrow, which would be Wednesday. I'm going to be spending some time with a friend, getting wrecked, and playing Magic the Gathering probably. So, taking my place will be Miss Misa. Be nice to her. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to her. So I hope everyone has a lovely Tuesday, and thank you all for listening.
I've got downs.
Imagine my shock